With Easter fast approaching, there's speculation about what the next big event in the galaxy is likely to be. There are ongoing stories in Federal, Alliance, Imperial and Independent space, all of which might make for something egg-citing for commanders to be doing in the coming week. But which will it be? Let's review what's been going on in the galaxy and what might be our special Easter surprise.
The Colonia bridge is done and dusted. There's a string of megaships joining the bubble to Colonia, and there are 6 starports commanders could choose to call home should they wish. There have been no more unpleasant surprises like the Holloway Biosciences Research Facility 15 that was found during construction, and which hinted at the existence of a dredger clan that practices cannibalism. The Phagos clan. If they do exist, this mysterious clan is out among the stars. We may never hear of them again.
Archon Delane seems to be happy enough with his new luxury starports around the galaxy and with the income from the illegal part of the trade in Onionhead Gamma strain. He suffered Thargoid damage to California Freeport in the California Nebula, the only starport ever to be attacked there, but it has long since been repaired and remains a sumptuous and wealthy starport in a beautiful location, just the place for the tourist trade, which is a far more reliable way of parting people from their credits than piracy ever was.
There seems little likelihood that President Hudson's proposal to change the law to allow him to run for the presidency for an unprecedented 3rd term in 3309 will cause any immediate trouble. The proposal for the so-called Hudson Contravention has been kicked into the long grass of a federal subcommittee, with every expectation that their deliberations will last for months, if not years. The Federation is a dull place, at least for now.
The Alliance has a little more going for it in terms of potential interest. The Sirius Corporation has its paternal eye on the Alliance, with 4 megaships occupying Alliance systems and prepared to leap to the Alliance's defence should an unexpected infestation of Thargoids in the core systems suddenly break out. The Riort Mining Coalition failed to depart from the Alliance following a massive bribe by the Sirius Corporation for the system to remain within the Alliance, so dissent amongst member systems seems to have been eliminated. Sirius hasn't bothered deploying megaships to the Coalsack, Witchhead or California nebulas, which are the places Thargoids actually go. Megaships are renowned for their utter uselessness in fighting Thargoids, but it doesn't really matter if Sirius is planning to hide in the least likely systems to actually see any Thargoid activity. Prime Minister Mann has agreed that the arrangement will be for a 3-month trial period, so the clock is ticking. It's not clear when the 3 months started. If it was the 9th of March when the trial was announced, then it'll run until early June. But if the trial runs from the 13th of January, when the megaships first entered Alliance systems, it could finish as early as tomorrow.
Over in the Empire, the reinstated Emperor Arissa, who managed to get herself kidnapped and was missing for more than a year without anyone realising, has failed to persuade the Marlinist colonies to swear allegiance to the throne her Imperial bottom currently occupies. The offer had been for military protection for the colonies and better trade relations. However, the Marlinists still seem to be smarting from the injustices meted out to them by the Imperial Navy when Senator Petraeus imposed system-wide lockdowns and sent combat forces against the megaships that were attempting to evacuate civilians from the war zones. It is interesting to realise in retrospect that these strikes took place during a time after the Emperor's final public engagement before she was kidnapped in September 3306. There are some who claim to have seen her as late as February 3307, but given the deepfake technology used by the kidnappers to pretend that the Emperor was still in charge, how reliable can these sightings be? In fact, how sure can we be that the Emperor currently on the throne is the real Emperor Orissa? The terrorist Neo-Marlinists appear to have been defeated once and for all in Madrid, and latterly the mercenary group that had been training them, Darkwater Inc., was defeated in Summerland, and the so-called Lords of Restoration, who were the brains behind the whole false flag operation, and whose goal had been the restoration of executive power to the Senate, cutting the Duval dynasty out of the political loop, were arrested. These lords have been held captive for 2 months now, with no indication that they'll be brought to trial or summarily sentenced for their crimes.
There has been very little activity from the Thargoids recently, with 3 systems in the bubble remaining under relatively low levels of incursion, and the strange anomaly, Lembas in the Witchhead Nebula, which seems to be locked in a permanent state of marginal Thargoid incursion. But perhaps the Thargoids hold the key to the most likely events that may soon befall the galaxy, and that's the ongoing power struggle between Aegis and Salvation for control of the anti-Thargoid industry.
Aegis has been on the ropes for some time. It lost its supply of Guardian research materials when the Alexandra megaship was sabotaged and then raided. With government funding from the 3 superpowers severely cut back amid allegations of incompetence, the organisation has been operating on a skeleton staff, placing megaships in Thargoid-attacked systems, but unable to undertake any research or proactive defence. Many of the senior staff have resigned or been forced to leave. Admiral Aidan Tanner is under military detention after he accused Salvation of deliberately provoking Thargoids to attack, and after he took direct action against Taurus Mining Ventures to try to force them to reveal more information about the secretive scientist. His court-martial has been put on indefinite hold, following the revelation by Professor Albert Ezro, one-time head of research in Aegis, and engineer Ram Tar, that Salvation's superweapon appears to use technology that might be considered as unethical. Quite why the court-martial was halted remains unclear, as Tanner was certainly responsible for the loss of the megaship Musashi.
Pitted against Aegis, we have Salvation and his faction Taurus Mining Ventures. Salvation mysteriously appeared from nowhere, round about the time we started finding out about what may have been the first reliably documented encounter with Thargoids by a company called Azimuth Biochemicals 200 years ago. Azimuth was secretly researching using Guardian and Thargoid technologies to develop a superweapon, but the research team went missing. With Salvation's help, commanders found that the crew of the Azimuth Anaconda Proteus had indeed developed a working prototype weapon, using a Guardian relic, but it had misfired and killed them all. Their secret had lain undiscovered for nearly 200 years. Shortly after the Proteus was rediscovered, Salvation developed his own superweapon, seemingly also using Guardian relics. In a demonstration firing in the Cornsar system, which had inexplicably become infested with Thargoids, the weapon proved successful in wiping out all the Thargoids in the system, destroying some ships and forcing the remainder to flee. Salvation used the weapon 3 times more in systems in the Pleiades, and once again the Thargoid incursions were immediately cleared. Salvation promised at the end of last year that he was preparing a far more deadly superweapon, one that'll wipe the Thargoids out completely. Nothing has yet been seen of this weapon, but his faction, Taurus Mining Ventures, has just finished collecting another megaship full of Guardian relics. So perhaps he has something planned for the near future.
But there's more to the story of Azimuth Biochemicals. We discovered last year that they were still active in 3303, less than 5 years ago, trying to engineer a Chimera Thargoid scout piloted by a human, and they appear to be implicated in the loss of the Aegis megaship Alexandria. Evidence found in the wreck points to the so-called Witch, who runs Azimuth, having ordered the megaship to be raided for its cargo, with the crew left to die of cold and suffocation. Salvation appears to have known a lot about the ancient research by Azimuth, and there are those who believe there may be a link between Salvation and Azimuth. If that were true, then Salvation may have directly benefited from the cargo looted from the Alexandria. Perhaps the stolen Guardian relics from the Alexandria were used to fire his superweapon. With so few Thargoid incursions, there doesn't seem to be a need for any more superweapon action. But with Salvation seemingly able to summon Thargoids at will, perhaps there will be a convenient resurgence of Thargoids just when Salvation is ready. Perhaps that's what will happen over Easter.
Or, of course, it may be that we'll find ourselves tasked with delivering seasonal goods, such as leathery eggs to the Egger 431 system, or to Boyle platform, to appease the wrath of the Galactic Easter Bunny. You never can tell.